not listen to this scary story at nighttime or right before you're going to bed. Because I love you so much, I'm giving you this warning because what the fuck. So typically I listen to a lot of Spanish scary stories because I like translating them for you guys. I typically listen to these when my husband's asleep next to me and I'm just like scrolling story through story, right? I will say when I listened to this story, I got full body chills, right? But I was like, okay, cool, I'm saving this. This is gonna be a good ass story, and I just kept going. A lot of the times you guys ask me in my comments like, how do you sleep after reading all these stories? And I'm gonna be honest, I sleep perfectly well. Like typically I'm not scared, and I wasn't scared last night, which is why it's so weird that I had a dream about this fucking story. I guess this story really impacted me more than I thought. So I'm gonna translate the story for you guys, and then I'm gonna tell you the dream that I had at the very end. So there was this girl, she was around 15 or 16 years old, and she lived with her mom. Unfortunately, her mom lost her job and they had no money, so they ended up losing their house as well. So one of the mom's family members tells them that they have a house that they can live in because they didn't want them to be homeless, but unfortunately this house was like away from civilization. This house was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by like hills and mountains, but since the mom and daughter had nowhere else to go, they accepted the offer and decided to go live in this house. They end up going to the house, and when they get there, they notice the strangest thing ever. Right in front of the door is this big ass tree. Like the tree was so big that when they would try to open the front door, it would be hitting that tree. So the mom thought it was really strange that the tree would be like right in front of the front door. So the people who actually gave him a ride to that house noticed the tree as well, and they told the mom that if she wanted to, they can also help her remove that tree so that it doesn't stop the front door from opening. And she agreed, so they decided to do it then and there. When they removed that tree, on the roots of like where the tree was growing, they see like a skeleton of a baby. The mom says that it looked like maybe someone had buried the baby a very long time ago because the bones of the baby's skeleton were just being eaten by the roots of that tree. She said that they didn't end up telling anybody about it. She just, had the tree removed, they saw that, and they just like moved on with their lives. Time passes, and in this house, it's a 2-bedroom home. It's a little small, but it does have a hallway that leads to both of the rooms. Both the mom and the daughter start hearing noises in the hallway, and they realize that it sounds like a little baby. She even said it doesn't sound like an animal, it didn't sound like a kid. There was no like steps walking. It sounded like a baby playing in the hallway. So the mom almost felt guilty because she felt like something had happened there. I mean, they found the baby bones, and she just felt really bad that maybe the baby ghost was there. So she started leaving out baby toys in the hallway. I already have chills. So after leaving the toys in the hallway, the mom says that they would then start hearing this baby playing with those specific toys that were left out for it. She mentions that nothing scary would happen, but she did feel that over time, the baby's energy was growing and growing. So one day, the mom and daughter get into a really big fight. And I mean, they were screaming at each other, like they were going at it, and the daughter ends up going to her room and like slamming the door, and mom also goes to her room and slams the door. So when the mom goes into her room, slams the door, and sits alone, she realizes that maybe she was a little tough on her daughter. Mom felt so bad and so guilty that she's like, I'm gonna go to her room and I'm gonna, apologize, and let's try to talk through it. So the mom goes and she knocks on her daughter's door, and of course the daughter didn't answer because she was pissed. After the daughter not answering her door, the mom still decided to open the door, and she starts off with, look, I really need to talk to you. And then she stays silent. The daughter was laying on her bed and she was like, what? That's when the mom was like, get up and come with me. And the daughter's like, what? And the mom's like, get up and come with me. The daughter's like, I thought you wanted to talk to me. And she goes, shut up, get up and come with me. So once the daughter realizes that something is going on because the mom was really seriously telling her to get up, she gets up. Her mom grabs her by the hand, they leave her bedroom, close her bedroom door, and the mom takes her back to her own room. So the mom explains that when she opened her daughter's door and told her, I need to talk to you, she looks at her daughter that's laying on the bed, and she sees a baby on top of her daughter's chest. She says that the baby was not a normal baby. When the mom was telling her daughter, get up and come with me, that baby would hold on to her daughter even tighter, looking at the mom and smiling at her. Oh my god, look at my arm. I think the reason why I imagine these stories in my head, so I'm seeing this shit like a movie in my brain. Can you imagine? She walked in there feeling so guilty that she got into a fight with her mom, tries to talk to her, and fucking sees a baby on her daughter's chest as she's telling her, get up and let's go. Baby hugs her daughter tighter while looking at her smiling. They left that house that night and never looked back. Didn't go back to investigate. Didn't want to know what the fuck happened there, because at that point it wasn't just a little innocent baby ghost, because she saw a baby, but it was not a normal looking baby. Now for my dream. So in my dream, I'm laying in bed. Leave it to me to take naps in my dream too. And next to me is one of my exes, because my dream wasn't scary enough. And in my dream, I'm waking up because I'm feeling something crawling up my body. And when this thing finally gets to the very top, I see a scary looking baby with fucking crazy teeth. And you know how like in your dreams you can't fight, it's like slow motion? Well, as soon as I saw that face, my hand was like trying to push it away. I mean, the baby was like biting my hand, and I was like, what do I do? Because I'm moving so slowly. I was pushing that baby towards my ex, who was still asleep, because what the fuck, take him, not me. But this baby wouldn't give up. It kept trying to come at me, and to the point where I'm slowly moving my fucking head away. It doesn't sound as scary, but like it was fucked up in my dream. Okay, so the baby's still crawling, and once it's like face to face to me, I guess it like I got so spooked that I woke myself up. All it had to do was go to my ex, like, why the fuck would you want me? But no, I got really scared. I woke up and I was like, what the fuck was I dreaming about right now? Anyway, I hope you don't have dreams about this story.
Let's read some more scary Reddit stories. Many years ago, my brother was driving home from college very late at night, early in the morning after finals or midterms from Michigan to Illinois. He's in the middle of nowhere and is getting drowsy. He dozes off for a second, then wakes up to someone saying wake up or stay awake behind him. Not screaming or anything, just what you'd say to someone if you were in the car with them. He looks in the rearview mirror and there's a girl sitting there. He looks at the road and looks again in the rear view and turns around. She's gone. A mile or two later, he drives past a cross and all these flowers on the side of the road. He's wide awake for the rest of the way home. Come to find out later, a college girl fell asleep one night while driving there. She fell asleep and went off the road and crashed and passed away. That is actually so sad. I was in a dead sleep on my couch when I got woke up by wailing and screaming on the front porch of my apartment building. It was my neighbor and some cops. The conversation happening outside my living room window was he had taken shrooms and also had a pew-pew in his apartment, and he admitted to wanting to blast through the walls then himself, so he called 911 and turns himself in. We shared a wall. His ass wanted to shoot all his neighbors. He was put on a gurney and taken to the hospital in an ambulance. I think he came home 2 or 3 days later, if memory serves me. I heard his door opening a lot, so assumed he was home, and shortly moved out afterwards. We only spoke maybe 5 or 6 times in the 7 years he lived on the other side of my living room wall. Okay, wait, I'm confused. So he wanted to pew-pew through the wall and unalive his neighbor at the same time? I don't really get that one. Okay, moving on. When I was little, around 8, I hated going to the dentist. He always made me uncomfortable for some reason. I remember thinking his smile stretched too far and seemed forced, like clowns. Anyway, my mom always came with me and went back so I wouldn't be scared. One day, my dad had me, my parents were divorced, and he had to take me to the dentist. They tried to make me go back alone so he could sit in the lobby doing whatever. The assistants had to literally drag me back to the room, and you could hear me screaming and crying down the hall, refusing to sit in the chair. Finally, my dad came back to get me. Irritated, I'd made a scene. He rescheduled my appointment to when my mom would have me, and we just left. He made a big deal about how bad I was acting and told my mom she was spoiling me and all sorts of shit. 2 weeks later, it's on the news that my dentist was charged with child porn after essaying children under anesthesia and photographing it. I lived in a small college town and my apartment complex was walking distance from the bar downtown area. One weekday night, I stepped out on our front porch to smoke a cigarette or two. I was up late studying. I brought my textbook with me and sat down on the stairs while I smoked. A girl who I had never met but who lived one apartment over but down on the ground floor came home from downtown. She was by herself, and you could tell from her walk she had been drinking. She got in her apartment and barely got the door closed before some guy who came out of nowhere knocked on her door. She opened, and I noticed he introduced himself, which was weird because it was after 2:30 a.m. Who comes to a strange girl's apartment at that time? So I decided to stay outside and pay attention. They ended up talking for over 10 minutes. She later acknowledged how weird the situation was, but did not know how to end the conversation. He would do the creepiest things, like he reached up and stroked her hair at least 3 times and would try to slowly inch his way closer to her and the door. I made a point of being loud with my textbook so he would know I was there, and he disappeared as eerily as he had come. We called the cops, and days later, they had the girl and me sit with a sketch artist. As soon as the sketch was made public, floods of calls came in. Guy turned out to be a serial rapist who followed lone girls home from bars and pretended to be a cab offering them a ride. This girl just got lucky because she lived so close to the bars. He didn't get a chance to pull that cab routine. And that is why you don't open the door for strangers. When I was little, my mom would take me to Kmart and let me wander around the toy section while she shopped. Normal in the 70s. One day as I was playing Simon Says, an old man walked up to me and was making small talk while I played. He eventually told me to come with him and took me by the hand. We walked right down the main center aisle of the stores towards the exit sign in the back. As we crossed the last row, I looked to the right and saw my mom at the end of the row. I told him I saw my mom and had to go. I pulled away my hand and ran down to her. I didn't tell her what happened because I didn't want to get in trouble for going with a stranger. It was several years later that I realized that I had probably narrowly avoided being kidnapped or worse. In a cold winter night in a remote village from Quebec, Canada in 1990, me and my 2 brothers were asleep. We were 1, 3, and 6 years old. In the middle of the night, someone entered our house without knocking, walked around, and was talking to himself. Our house is 2 miles from the village in a rural area. My father woke up, went to the living room where the guy was. He had a car accident 1 mile from our house with his buddy who passed away instantly, and his scalp fell in front of his face. So the first time my father saw him, he saw a man with no face. He was drunk and his body was frozen. He was speaking to himself. The fact that his face was partially frozen might have saved his life, preventing him to lose too much blood. My father took him to the hospital, and he did survive. That is freaking crazy. Went camping with some friends on a hill a few kilometers out in the woods from one of the guys' houses. There's a few hiking, 4-wheeling trails in the area that lead up to the hill, so it's known by locals. It was about midnight, we had a fire going, and we were just sitting around having a good time. Then the guy, there was 4 of us, sitting opposite of me, yells, "Who are you?" I turn around and there's this man about 6 feet tall staring at us from the edge of the woods with a big rock in his hand. One guy knocked an arrow in the compound bow we had. The guy across from me grabbed the hatchet, and I pulled the knife off of my belt. We had no clue what we were doing, but the guy wouldn't say anything to us. He eventually just backed into the woods. No sleep was had that night, and we kept a very large fire going. We were partying at a usual party spot by the river, and some dude came out of the woods. He just kept saying weird shit like, "You gotta watch yourself down here. There are some bad folks around here." And when asked who he was, he just said, "I'm nobody." We were all a little sketched out and basically told the guy to fuck off. A couple days later, a girl went off the rope swing there and got really fucked up. Someone put fishing hooks all over the bottom of the rope swing, and it took chunks of flesh out of her leg. Later, we found out the dude was just a guy that lived nearby, and although a creepy drunk, he was harmless. There was a fucked up, probably inbred family that lived up the road that he would warn people about. About 5 years later, last year, they beat some kid up with a log and kidnapped some girl at Pew Pew Point and took her on a joyride. That sounds like wrong turn. Once I was walking my dog in a park in London, Ontario. There are houses that sit on the edge of the park and back onto the Thames River and hiking trails. It was a pretty hot day, and my dog was thirsty, so I brought him to the river to drink. We got down to the river, and we were behind a house with a large privacy fence that sat on the edge of the park. While my dog was drinking, I heard loud banging noises coming from the backyard like a hammer. I thought somebody was building a shed or something. All of a sudden, the hammer stops, and a man says, "Shut up, nobody knows you're here." And the banging began again. I froze in fear and then ran up to the bank back into the park. I was now directly beside said creepy house. A man came out of the backyard in fatigues with a rusty old wheelbarrow, heading towards 2 quintessential kidnapping vans parked in front of his house. He noticed me looking at him as I was walking past, set down the wheelbarrow, and just stared at me until I was out of the park. I called the police when I got home, and I still have no idea what happened. Eek, that's scary. Last year, a guy came to my house's door around 9 p.m. He knocked and I got my mom, and she went out to see what was up. By the way, we live in a very rural area, so visits that late are extremely uncommon and strange. The guy talked to my mom about how he was opening a business, asked whether she liked American-made products, then handed her a Clorox container as a sample. He went back to his minivan and opened it to get a vacuum cleaner when my mom saw 5 other men sitting inside. She told me to run and get my phone since we don't have a landline. I couldn't find it, so I got my knife and stood around the corner. She threw the container outside and told them to get the hell off of her property, as well as she was calling the cops. They peeled out of the driveway and we never saw the car again. That is so scary.
Can we show them the older homestead?
Yeah, let's go. As you know.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Was that you?
Yeah, that's on either side.
It went to both.
Yeah.
So for those that still believe skinwalkers aren't real, listen to this because I'm still in shock after reading it. Before I begin, if you have a horror story that you want me to read, go ahead and follow my Instagram that's linked in my bio and DM me your story. So one of my followers named Carlos told me his experience with a skinwalker and he's still shook about it. So Carlos told me he grew up in the mountains. His family lived in a small cabins tucked into the woods, miles away from the nearest town. For him, seeing and hearing strange things wasn't unusual. He told me the woods have their own language. Coyotes howling at night, branches snapping with no wind, shapes moving in the trees. But Carlos told me what happened to him one night still haunts him because he swears on everything. It wasn't just some strange noise in the woods. It was something else. It was a skinwalker. He told me it was late fall and he had been helping his dad stack firewood outside. The sun was setting and the woods turned dark fast. He told me it was the kind of darkness that swallows sound. His dad had already gone inside, but Carlos told me he stayed out a little bit longer just to gather up some last pieces. In the midst of doing this all, Carlos told me he heard it. At first, he told me it sounded like a person calling his name. Carlos. He told me it was drowned out and it sounded just like that, like someone was kind of like singing a tune to his name. He told me he immediately froze in the moment because the voice came from a little bit inside of the woods, but it didn't sound right. He told me it was too flat and too hollow. He told me he yelled back thinking that it was probably one of his cousins who sometimes come up to hunt in the area, but when he said, "Yeah, who's out there?" there was no answer. Just silence. Carlos told me he shook it off, grabbed the last log, and headed back towards the cabin. But then he heard it again. Carlos. This time it was closer and he told me the hairs on his neck stood up. He told me he knew every voice in his family, every voice from the neighbors who lived in the mountains, and this didn't sound like any of them. It sounded like someone was trying to imitate a voice. But the thing is, whoever it was not getting it right. Carlos told me he bolted inside and locked the door. His dad immediately came up to him asking what was wrong, and Carlos told him that he thought he heard someone calling his name in the woods. He told me his dad frowned about it, but didn't really get into the subject. His dad basically told him that in the mountains, you learn not to chase after strange things. The best thing to do is to not go further and to head back to safety, and it was good that Carlos did that. Although his dad did praise him, Carlos told me he could not sleep at night. Around midnight, Carlos told me he was laying in bed staring at the ceiling when he heard footsteps crunching in the gravel outside of the cabin. It was slow, but then came a sound that made his blood run cold. Carlos told me he suddenly heard knocking. 3 slow knocks on his window. He told me in this moment his body literally shut down. He pulled the blanket up to his chin, praying whoever it was would just leave him alone. And then, through the thin cabin walls, Carlos told me he heard it again. Carlos, open the door. He said it was his mom's voice. At least it sounded like his mom's voice. He told me it sounded like that she was in danger, like she was in distress. But the only thing that made him not get up and open that door was him realizing that his mom was asleep. She was in the room down the hall, and he knew that. He told me he laid frozen in bed until the next morning, not trying trying to make sound, not even trying to breathe heavy because God knows what would happen. The next day, he told me he tried to convince himself that it was absolutely nothing. That maybe he just had lack of sleep, or maybe it was just some animals making weird noise. But Carlos told me 2 nights later, it escalated. He told me he had gone outside to take scraps from the compost pile. The moon was bright and the woods, they were eerily quiet. There were no crickets, no owls, no wind. And as he was working on this pile, Carlos looked up and he told me he saw it. A little bit in the distance, he saw a shape crouched low to the ground. At first, he thought it was a deer, but then it stood up. It was way too tall, its arms were really long, its legs were bent strangely like it didn't belong in its own body. And then he heard a voice. Carlos. He told me the voice cracked like it was straining to sound human. Carlos told me he swears the thing started to move towards him in a jerky, unusual stride, and he didn't wait to see more. He told me he dropped the scraps and sprinted back inside, slamming the door behind him. His dad found him pale and shaking, barely able to get words out. He told me his dad didn't laugh, he didn't even question what was going on. He locked every door, every window, and he even told Carlos to never go outside in the dark ever again. Carlos told me now he doesn't really talk about it much, but when he does, he always says the same thing. In the mountain, there are things you see, you hear, and things you don't answer to. Because once they know your name, they don't stop calling it. And that's exactly why Carlos swears on everything he encountered a skinwalker.
My skin is turning yellow, so I'm gonna do my makeup to cover it up and ignore the fact that I probably have an underlying health issue that I need to go get checked out, but I have no money and no insurance, so yeah, let's just do our makeup and cover it up. Also, I'm gonna tell you a really scary story time about something that I remember when I was 6 years old. Just realized that I'm all out of foundation, so I can't do a full beat today. That's okay. We're gonna do the eyes. Okay, so let's take it back. Take it back. Okay, whoa. Not the table. Let's not take the table back. Okay. No, okay, so let's take it back to when I was 6 years old. So it was Christmas morning, or like Christmas Eve night. Like everybody was sleeping, but 6-year-old me was like trying my hardest to stay awake so that I could see Santa Claus. I wanted to catch him in the act. I was like, I'm gonna be the first kid on this earth that sees Santa Claus. You know, little kids. So I'm like sitting up, waiting to hear a noise, like almost falling asleep, when I hear like a slight kind of shuffling noise coming from the living room. So I'm like, oh fuck, it's Santa. Now is my time to shine. I'm gonna go see him. So I'm super fucking excited. I run to my door, spring out of bed as fast as I can, and I go and I kind of peek around my door frame, whatever. And the first thing I notice is the green glow of the Christmas tree, which is normal for my house. Like, my family used to always turn the Christmas tree lights to green at night. I think it was to match the stockings because my mom had like a green kind of theme for her stockings. Not just stockings, but like she had like a theme for every room, like a color theme for every room, and the color theme for the living room was green. Not that that matters. Actually, it does kind of matter. Well, I remember just thinking like, how magical is my house? And like, you know, my little 6-year-old brain just being so grateful that my mom was the type of mom to like set up the house so nice for Santa's arrival. And I just remember right as I was thinking that is when I saw something from my chimney, aka the fireplace, which was like directly in view of my room, in the hallway of everybody's room, basically. As the guy like finally got out from the chimney, I noticed that he was green. And thinking back on it now, I'm pretty sure it definitely was. It absolutely was the glow of the green lights like reflecting off of his outfit. I'm pretty sure he was wearing all black or something like that. Obviously, he was trying to rob our fucking house. I watched this guy as he is literally taking out a pillowcase and fucking going under my tree, going under our family's tree and stuffing up his fucking shit with all of our presents. I was like, yo, that's the fucking Grinch guy. The Grinch is in my house. No way. I was floored. I think that was like the first year that my mom showed me the Grinch movie, like How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The real one, like the real people one, like the one where he actually looked really scary. And so I was really thinking like this was it. He's gonna steal the presents, he's gonna steal the tree, he's gonna steal us, and he's just gonna take off, and we're not gonna have a Christmas. So at that point, I froze, and I'm standing in the doorway staring at him doing this, tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't know what to do. I thought Christmas was over. As if it was like a Christmas miracle, a miracle from Santa Claus himself. The guy, the Grinch, stepped on the only loose floorboard in our living room, and it creaked so fucking loudly that it woke up my dog that was sleeping in my parents' bedroom, and she went ballistic. She went absolutely fucking insane, which then woke up my whole family. And thankfully my stepdad and the dog ran out of the bedroom. This is like what I remember in my brain, okay? I was 6, so it's kind of jumbled for me, but I remember like seeing the door of their bedroom bust open and the dog flew out first. Then my stepdad ran out behind the dog, and oh my God, it scared me so bad that was when I like hop, skipped, and jumped back into my bed. I got some bravery back, and I ran back over to my door frame, and I peeked around to see like how this was gonna go down, what was gonna happen, if he was going to catch the Grinch, if we were gonna get like, if Christmas was gonna be saved. But I never got to really see anything except for the fact that my stepdad had fucking like intercepted the man. I'm pretty sure he had him in his grip, and that's all I saw. That's all I saw, because my mom came out of the bedroom, realized that I was awake and watching the situation go down. So she ran out of her bedroom, grabbed me, threw me in her room, locked me in her bedroom, ran back out, went into my brother's room, grabbed my brother, ran back into her room, locked us all in there. And that's pretty much all I know about the situation. Because, like I said, I was 6 years old. They kept all of that from me. I wasn't supposed to know any of it. The cops were called, and the guy did get arrested because my dad like ended up detaining him in the house until the police got there. And we did get all of our presents back, so Christmas was not stolen by the Grinch, and I was really happy about that. And I don't know why I didn't tell my mom that I saw the guy come in, because I just didn't want her to like either not believe me or like freak out even more. Plus, I was just happy that we got to have a relatively normal Christmas after that. And then I pretty much forgot about it for the rest of the day until I was older. I don't know, it was fucking scary. Also, this is not my best look. This is not my best job. I'm pretty concerned about my yellow skin. Why is my skin turning yellow?
What the fuck was that? Bro!
What's going on around you?
I don't know. I'm frozen. I am frozen.
Did the window
Sean.
break?
Hi guys, so today I'm gonna do another story time. So for today's story time, I'm gonna be talking about duendes. This is something that happened to me a few years ago, so if you guys don't believe in the supernatural or what I'm about to say, then keep fucking scrolling because I don't want to hear it. This story actually takes place in this room, but this happened back in 2022, so like 3 years ago. So my baby was about to be 3 months. We moved here in March of 2022. Around that time, we didn't have a bed like we do now. We had a queen size air mattress, okay? So keep that in mind because this plays an important role in the story later on. Like I mentioned before, I was afraid to sit, so we would take turns watching the baby. So I would get my full 8 hours of sleep while my boyfriend would watch the baby, and then he would get his full 8 hours of sleep while I would take over and watch the baby. So I remember on this specific day, it was my turn to get some sleep while it was my boyfriend's turn to watch over our baby. Before falling asleep, I do remember my boyfriend having the baby in his swing. I'll insert a picture right here. So yeah, he was strapped in and everything, and I just told him, hey, make sure you wake me up. I won't get mad. You can wake me up 30 minutes from now, an hour from now, or after I get my full 8 hours of sleep. Make sure you wake me up if you get really, really tired, okay? So I made it very fucking clear. I told him, please wake me up no matter what. If you're getting tired, if you need to go to the bathroom, whatever you need, please wake me up, okay? Because I do not want to leave my baby alone for any little reason. So eventually I fall asleep and I wake up around 3 to 4 a.m. The first thing I notice is my boyfriend. I look over at my boyfriend and he had fallen asleep. Okay, so at this point I'm fucking angry. I'm like, bro, I told you to wake me up if you get tired because I don't want the baby alone. And then I look over to go check on the baby. The baby is no longer in his swing where my boyfriend last had him. I look over at his crib. The baby is not in his crib. So at this point I'm fucking hyperventilating. I'm fucking crying. I'm like, where the fuck is the baby? Okay. I look over at my boyfriend and I am shaking him. I'm calling him by his fucking government name. I'm like, Gilbert, wake the fuck up. Where is the baby? I'm moving his arms. I'm moving his legs just in case he had fallen asleep on the baby. And I had thought, you know, like maybe he was carrying the baby and he had fallen asleep with him in his arms and he must have like fell over him, right? So I'm fucking crying. I'm screaming at him and he eventually gets up and he's like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And I just remember yelling at him at the top of my fucking lungs. And I'm like, where is the fucking baby? So eventually my screaming gets to him. He gets up and we start looking for the baby. And we finally find the baby. My boyfriend actually found the baby. He was face down by our air mattress, like under our air mattress, okay? So I was just like concerned. I was like, what the fuck? Like, how the fuck did the baby get right underneath our air mattress? Like, it wasn't making any sense. And since my boyfriend is atheist, he was trying to find any explanation, and obviously the first thing in my head was like, okay, this is like paranormal, right? Like, this has to be paranormal. Like, there's no way the baby just magically appeared right underneath our air mattress. That doesn't make any sense because he was strapped on, right? And at 3 months old, my baby was never able to move. Like, at 3 months old, I have videos and pictures where he is stiff and he's not able to like roll around yet, okay? So eventually I calm down and I'm telling my boyfriend, you know what, like, you should go get some sleep because I don't trust you looking after the baby. Like, I know you're really tired, so I'm just gonna look after him. So I give him his next bottle, and as I'm scrolling on TikTok, I just let like a few hours pass by and I eventually get tired. So I wake my boyfriend up and I'm like, babe, can you look after him? Because I'm getting really, really tired. And so he does, and I eventually end up falling asleep again for the second time that night. And I had a dream, a weird dream. Remember, it was a duende, and I'm in my backyard and I just see this little duende like run around and I'm looking for him, and I eventually wake the fuck up, okay? I don't end up telling my boyfriend about my dream because since he is atheist, he always has an explanation for things, so I just didn't want to hear it. A few days go by, I'm scrolling on TikTok again and I come across a video, and it deals about duendes. So in my head, I'm like, okay, this is like way too many coincidences. Like, first the baby, then this dream about duendes, and now I'm coming across a video that I've never came across. Like, on my TikTok, I've never came across a video about duendes. So I'm watching it and I eventually pause it because I'm reading the comments, and I come across a comment that like it literally catches my attention, okay? So, by the way, her comment is in Spanish, and as I'm reading, my mouth is literally like to the floor. My jaw is open, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is way too many coincidences. So she mentions that she went to the bathroom, she left her baby alone for a few minutes, and then she came back, and her baby was nowhere to be found. By the way, she had left her baby in his swing too, okay? And he was around the same age as my son was. He was also 3 months. And she explains how she's looking everywhere for him, and she cannot find her baby. Then eventually she hears the cries and she goes back to where she left the baby in the room. She doesn't see the baby in his swing, and she eventually looks under the bed, and there he was. The baby was underneath the bed, and she sees something pull him away a little bit more to the middle of the bed, and she eventually grabs him, and she's shook when she sees a little figure running around. So as I'm reading the comment, I click under her comments because she had another comment under her comment. I don't know if you, yeah, whatever. And as I'm reading it, there's this lady saying, I don't know if you knew this, but duendes are attracted to baby boys, especially when they're around 3 months. And I mean, I'm obviously in shock. I'm like, this is way too many coincidences. Like, so we can't find our baby anywhere. And then when we do find him, he's underneath our air mattress, and there's no explanation on how he got there. Then I had the weird dream about duendes when I've never ever had a dream about anything like that. And then now I run into a TikTok, I read the comments, and there's a lady with the same exact story like mine, and underneath there's this lady talking about, oh, that duendes are attracted to baby boys, especially around 3 months of age. And so I started digging in a little bit more, and I started doing a little research. So as I'm doing research, I'm watching so many videos, and all these videos are in Spanish, and basically they're saying like, you're very, very lucky, you're very fortunate that you woke up on time to find your baby, you know, alive and safe and sound, because a lot of women are very unfortunate and their babies goes missing, their babies no longer found, or if they are found, they are no longer alive.